Hi folks, and welcome to this video on Act 1 Scene 3 of Macbeth. We're going to split this scene into 3 videos because there is so much to talk about, and the first thing we're going to focus in on is the witches. But before we get into that, I want you to stop the video and do a quick recap. Bullet point your ideas for this. What do you know already about the witches, Macbeth and Duncan? So take about 2 or 3 minutes to do that and then start the video again when you're ready. Okay, so we met the witches in Act 1, Scene 1. The stage was set with thunder and lightning. It's a really dramatic opening to the play, and Shakespeare was really at pains to present the witches as being unnatural, unsettling, malevolent agents of the devil. In that opening scene, it's almost as if their language is incantatory, as if they're casting a spell. They're chanting, there's full rhyme, they speak in trochaic tetrameter, they each take turns to speak, and their lines almost overlap one another. We also learn that the witches know what's going to happen at the end of the battle. They talk about when the battle's lost and won, and they are going to plan to meet with Macbeth on the heath after the battle is finished. And that scene finishes with the couplet, "Fair is foul and foul is fair, hover through the fog and filthy air," which means that things that look bad might actually be good, and things that look good might actually be bad. So that kind of final couplet is about how things are not always what they seem. There might be surprises on the way. Then we hear about Macbeth in Act 1, Scene 2. The captain from the army comes back from battle and reports to Duncan that Macbeth is a great hero and he's defeated the traitor MacDonald and the Norwegian forces. We also then hear about a separate battle with Norwegian forces again, in which the Thane of Cawdor has also been revealed to be a traitor. Duncan then says that the Thane of Cawdor should be executed. So Duncan is showing his leadership qualities here, his ability to manage the situation and to dole out punishment when that's appropriate. And he says that Macbeth should be given the title of Thane of Cawdor as a reward for his bravery. So we learn that Macbeth is patriotic, he's serving his country, he's courageous, he's brave in battle, he's also a very violent character. He's a killing machine at this point in the play. And we learn that Duncan can put punishments on people, but that he's also very generous and very trusting in his character. And that ultimately is going to lead to Duncan's death later in the play. As we get into this scene then, we're thinking a lot more about witches and witchcraft, so I just wanted to give you a little snippet of some of the beliefs about witches and witchcraft in Shakespeare's time. And a lot of this is summed up in a book that King James I wrote called The Demonology, and these are just some snippets from the first page of that book. James talked about how they are fearful, abounding at this time in this country of these detestable slaves of the devil. Abounding means to increase. So King James is kind of presenting his country as almost being overrun by witches. He describes them as being slaves of the devil. So the witches are agents of the devil, they're in league with the devil, they are under his control. James talks about the assaults of Satan. It's almost as if the country is under attack from the witches, and he wants them to be punished really severely. At the time, they thought the witches killed animals. They could do things like sailing in a sieve, which seems a little bit random. They control the weather, so they could send storms. They could also destroy harvests. They could turn into rats without tails. And all of these things are referred to at the start of Act 1, Scene 3. So Shakespeare's really drawing on these beliefs at the time about witchcraft and putting them into his play. And the reason why he does that is he's presenting the witches as unnatural, sinister, and malevolent agents of the devil. And it makes the audience really fully aware that they are not to be trusted. So when Macbeth steps on stage in this scene, finally we get to see our tragic hero, and he meets with the witches and he starts to believe their prophecies. We as the audience are thinking, like, do not fall into their trap. We are fully warned of how devilishly powerful and kind of how we shouldn't trust these particular characters. Okay, and then the setting of this scene, promise we'll read it in a second, but the setting of this scene is described as being a blasted heath. Those are Macbeth's words from later in the scene. And this kind of adjective, blasted, means that the heath, this kind of open landscape, Imagine if you've been to the Cheviot or if you've been to Scotland, up in the hills, totally open, maybe with heather, but it's very desolate and very barren, and it seems quite isolated, quite empty, windswept, a difficult place to survive in. And this is really a symbol of decay, of endings, of struggle, of suffering. And it's also isolated and separate from human civilization. And here Shakespeare is again emphasizing how unnatural the witches are and how they are othered from human society. They are separated off from human society. Blasted, that adjective, could also mean cursed. So this is a place of evil. So again, we're being warned here that we shouldn't trust the witches. Right, let's read the first section of this scene. So the first witch says, "Where hast thou been, sister?" And the second witch says, "Killing swine." So swine are pigs. So she's been killing pigs. Now, it's almost a sense here that she's got blood on her hands. Yes, it's the blood of animals rather than of people. But at this kind of early section of the play, we've already got a sense that there's been a huge amount of death in this country at this point. Macbeth has almost been bathing in blood of other people, and Banquo too actually has been doing that, bathing in the blood of other people as they've been fighting against the Norwegian forces. And later on, we see Lady Macbeth furiously scrubbing blood off her hands. This kind of washing of the hands happens immediately after Duncan's murder, but Lady Macbeth continues that at the end of the play. And here we have the witch, probably with blood on her hands because she has been killing pigs. So this idea of how people can violently cause the death of other beings is being driven home here. The third witch says, "Sister, where thou?" So the question goes back round to the first witch, "Where have you been? What have you been doing?" And the first witch says, "A sailor's wife had chestnuts in her lap." I don't know if you've ever had chestnuts roasted on an open fire at Christmas, but that's what we're imagining here. "And she munched and she munched and munched." So these seem like really tasty chestnuts. "Give me," quoth I. So the first witch asks the sailor's wife for her chestnuts. They seem so delicious. And the woman said, "Aroint thee, witch." We hear a similar word later in the play when Macbeth tells the ghost of Banquo, "Avaunt." It means get out of my sight, get away from me. So "Around thee, witch," the rump-fed Ronyan cries. I don't know why I find this bit so funny. But the first witch says she wanted the chestnuts and she was being sent away by this woman who didn't want to give her the chestnuts. And the first witch plans to get her revenge. So she says her husband's to Aleppo gone, master of the Tiger. Now the Tiger is a boat, and her husband is the captain of this ship. And the first witch is going to get her revenge on this woman, but she's going to do this through the husband. So "In a sieve I'll thither sail, and like a rat without a tail, I'll do, I'll do, I'll do." So here we have the sieve, we've got the rat without a tail, so these references to beliefs about witches at the time. The second witch says, "Right, I'm going to help you with this. I'll give you a wind." So in her little civvy boat, the first witch is going to be blown along by this wind so that she can catch up with the tiger and punish the husband. The first witch says, "Thou art kind." The third witch doesn't want to be kind of shown up by her friend, so she says, "And I, another, I'm going to give you some wind too." And the first witch says, "I myself have all the other. Right, I've got enough wind now." And the very ports they blow and the quarters that they know in the shipman's card, "I will drain him dry as hay." Like she really takes joy in enacting or planning the revenge that she's going to enact on this woman's husband. "I will drain him dry as hay, sleep shall neither night nor day hang upon his penthouse lid, he shall live, a man forbid." She's going to destroy this man's life, all because his wife wouldn't give the witch any chestnuts. He's not going to have any sleep. He's going to live like a man forbid, as in someone who is just terrified of everything. Now, this is a bit of clever foreshadowing on Shakespeare's part, because later on in the play, Macbeth is not going to be able to sleep. He says, "Sleep no more." And he's going to live like a man forbid, a man who's frightened of everything, who's having an existential crisis as well, who thinks that his life is coming to nothing, and he totally descends into despair and nihilism. So the first witch continues, "Weary 7 nights 9 times 9 shall he dwindle, peak and pine. Though his bark cannot be lost, yet it shall be tempest tossed. Look what I have." So this line, "though his bark cannot be lost," the first witch is talking about the man's ship. He's the captain of the ship called the Tiger. And she says she doesn't have the power to destroy this ship, but it can be tempest tossed. It can be tossed around in the middle of a storm. And if you imagine seafaring at this time, it's not like a boat you would get on today. It would be constructed of wood, it would have sails. To be kind of thrown around in the middle of a storm would be absolutely terrifying. But we do see some limitations on the witch's power here. His bark cannot be lost. She cannot destroy the bark of the ship. She can just affect the weather around it. So interesting limitations here on the witch's power. The second witch says, show me, show me. She wants to see what the first witch has. And she says, here I have a pilot's thumb, racked as homeward he did come. Now, to hold up a human body part on stage at this point in history would have been really provocative, because King James strongly believed that human body parts, skin and bones and things, were used by witches in their spells. And if someone was found to have a human body part that they were maybe going to use for these purposes, they could be facing the death penalty. Okay, but the first witch is interrupted by the drum. A drum, Macbeth doth come. So the tragic hero is arriving. And there's almost an overlapping now of the plot about the captain of the ship and his wife and the chestnuts and the story of Macbeth. So again, that hint that this story about the captain is foreshadowing what's going to happen with Macbeth. And the three witches chant their spell to finish this scene, or this section of the scene. The weird sisters hand in hand, posters of the sea and land, thus do go about, thrice to thine and thrice to mine, and thrice again to make up 9. Peace. The charms wind up. So they don't want to kind of forget about the captain and his wife. They want to finish that particular spell, and then they're going to move on to Macbeth. Okay, lots of information there. So activity for you to do just to finish this video off. I want you to answer the question, what do you now know about the witches, and brain dump as many bullet points as you can think of based on what I have said. Okay, thanks very much everyone. I'll look at the rest of the scene in the next couple of videos.